That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to wake up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. And it's a very happy Tuesday, July the 18th to you and yours. You're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. Drew Hicken is on the other side of the glass, and it's good to have you back, Drew.
Good to be back.
Good to be here. Hope you enjoyed, I guess, somewhat of a long weekend for you. Good to have you with us, and of course, good to have you listening at 6 a.m. on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Of course, you can find that via our streaming devices, the WTSM app, TuneIn Radio app. They both work just fine, but of course, one of those is our own, so we prefer you use it. Podcast, you know where to get all those things by now. iTunes, Podcast Republic, yada, yada, yada. We're on YouTube now, too, by the way. You can find us on the War Chant YouTube channel. Every single episode makes its way into those archives. If that's what you do, if you're like me, and sometimes you fall down those rabbit holes, or sometimes you like to listen to audio or something through that channel, well, we have just another way for you to listen to the show. You know how to talk back. It's radio@warchant.com. There's your email address, @WakeUpWarChant, your Twitter account, if you like to keep those musings to 140 characters or less. And as always, Wake Up War Chant brought to you by our friends at For the Table, the good folks over at Madison Social, Central and Township, all there right in the heart of College Town. All right, last order of business for ACC kickoff for a lot of reasons today. We have our last ACC kickoff interview today. Gary Stokan of the Peach Bowl is going to join us a little bit later. The boss man, Mr. Gene Williams of warchant.com, the founder and administrator, going to join us to talk about his story about, well, the hype, the build, and the money. My goodness, the money behind Florida State, Alabama. Drew, if you were a wealthy man, if you and I were both well-off millionaires, would you pay $450 for a nosebleeder for Florida State, Alabama?
No. For a nosebleed, I think if I was that wealthy, then I'd be getting myself a nice ticket. But if you're saying, like, if that was the only thing that was left, I think at that point I'd almost rather it be on my TV.
Because $450 to $500 is what you're looking at right now. If you're looking, of course, our friends at SeatGeek and all the other different places, it's a complete sellout. You are trying to scratch and claw to get into this thing, and we're, of course, going to have Gary to talk about that. And, well, the Peach Bowl, boy, you want to talk about folks who've hit a home run on this bad boy. You're in that kind of second-tier bowls just a decade ago. Now you're one of the New Year's Six bowls. You have this kickoff game, and you've put together what they're literally dubbing it themselves, the greatest opener of all time, the GOAT game. That's what they're calling this now.
Yeah, you got to really hope this game's not a dud. I mean, I don't think it's going to be. I'm just saying the hype that's surrounding it and everything that's going into it, all the preparation and the new stadium, things like that. I really hope, on either side, I hope the game's just not a dud.
So you're going to hear from Gene, you're going to hear from Gary later, but first you're going to hear from us because the last order of business from ACC kickoff finally came out yesterday, and that's the media's projected order of finish and the ACC Player of the Year. No surprises here. Florida State expected to win the ACC, also expected to take that Atlantic Division. Florida State with 118 votes to win the ACC. Second place, Clemson in 35. Interesting enough, more people project Clemson to win the Atlantic than project them to win the ACC. 37 votes for the Atlantic, 35 for that championship. 121 votes. That's how many people think is going to have Florida State as the Atlantic Division champion. I want to know the three people who have Florida State losing the ACC championship and the two people who have Clemson losing the ACC championship, because it would obviously have to be to Virginia Tech, who's got 3 of those votes, Miami, who's got 3 of those votes, and believe it or not, Duke, the Fighting Cutcliffes, they got themselves a vote to win the ACC. How about that? Of course, you know what the picture is in the Atlantic Division. It's pretty straightforward. It's Florida State, it's Clemson, it's Louisville, it's NC State after that bounce back at the end of the year from Dave Dorn's company. Wake Forest, 5th, Syracuse 6th, and Boston College. No respect for the Eagles after they surged and got a bowl last year, finishing 7th. The Coastal's where it gets tricky. And, well, it's the Miami Hurricanes almost to an extent by default. And you and I have both talked about this. We've talked about it with our friend Jeff Cameron last week. We talked about it with Ira Schafel. Everybody just kind of seems to be picking Miami because just like, yeah, sure, Miami, I guess. Because it's got to happen eventually, right?
Right, and it's who else are you really going to go with? I mean, look, at the end of the day, I really like Virginia Tech, but they're replacing a quarterback, as is Miami. But Miami's got the best roster in the Coastal, and sooner or later, you got to think they're going to put something together. There's a lot of momentum surrounding Richt and everything he's doing over there right now. I'll believe it when I see it. But if I had to pick a Coastal champion, I mean, I guess it would be Miami. I just really don't know who else you would go with in there. Yeah, so I think that's why you see, obviously, the surplus of votes for them is they, at the end of the day, they just have the best roster. Just are they going to do something about it?
I think it's amazing. Literally everyone in the Coastal Division received at least 4 votes to win their side of the conference, except poor Virginia. Bronco Mendenhall, second season, no respect. You understand why, though. But overall, no one really knows. I mean, Miami's a placeholder to some, but to me, look up and down. You mentioned it. Virginia Tech is replacing a quarterback. Georgia Tech, the up and down roller coaster ride that has been the Paul Johnson era, you can't predict them to win that conference because they will burn you. Pittsburgh, replacing Nate Peterman. North Carolina, replacing Mitch Trubisky. Duke, returning quarterback. Good returning quarterback. Not sure if they got the pieces around it. I mean, you can say what a great job David Cutcliffe's done all you want. You could talk about quarterback play all you want. At the end of the day, it's still Duke. So Miami, you mentioned it, most talented roster, you feel maybe has the best shot of absorbing a loss like Brad Kaya, who, let's face it, as good as Brad Kaya could be numbers-wise, not always the best in big games. Seemed to always, whenever the moment was big, maybe didn't always have the biggest, I guess, greatest games is the word I'm looking for. And Kosi Perry, we don't know. We don't know anything about that kid. But here's what we do know. We know in week 3, the projected Atlantic and Coastal Division champions are going to play each other at Bobby Bowden Field at Doak Campbell Stadium. And I'll say this, if the Coastal's going to be a mess, if it really is going to be the train wreck that some of us think it can be, if you don't get good quarterback play till late in the year, you may as well at least follow it up. If you're not going to have a great game, you may as well have an FSU-Miami rematch. You've wanted it for so long. You've begged for it for so long. Why not give the folks what they want? Give Florida State and Miami a primetime slot, because that's always the 8 p.m. kick, the ACC title game, in Charlotte, North Carolina for the whole shebang.
Here's a Twitter poll question I saw earlier that I really liked. It was, as a Florida State fan, would you rather beat Miami week 3 and get them again in the ACC title game to overtake the overall series this year, or would you rather just beat them week 3 and them not make it at all and just still have the joke of them never winning the Coastal? Me personally, I would just rather have the joke of never winning the Coastal. We can beat them again next year. I don't particularly care. It wouldn't be any sweeter for me to beat them. Like, sure, it'd be fine to beat them twice, but I don't really want them in the ACC title game.
I'm not the fondest of rematches in college football, not just as a Florida State fan, but as a college football fan in general. We only get to play at the very most 15 of these. Last thing I want to do is see the same team twice. But overall, yeah, I'm with you. I think the idea of the All Canes Conference, and here we sit almost the better part of 2 decades later thinking, well, where is it? Where is it? We've been waiting on it, Miami, since, what is it, 2004? 2005? 12 years. It's a long time, Canes. Got to get it together sooner or later. It's also worth noting Mark Richt only won his division, twice at Georgia? I want to say it is. Well, it was 2005 and 2012, so yeah, sure, whatever. Got to get that W, boys. It's not much of a rivalry if only one side wins. But enough schadenfreude. Let's get you caught up on baseball and get talking about the Peach Bowl, shall we? This is Why You Were Sleeping.
Hello. Good morning.
Wake up! Wake up!
Wake me up.
Good morning. Good morning.
What happened last night?
Only time for a couple scores, and we'll start at Atlanta, where the Cubbies get the better of the Braves, who are trying to be above 500. Sorry about that, Bravos fans. It's 4-3 Chicago in Atlanta. The Yankees fall to the Twins in Minnesota 4-2. It's the Twins in that final score. A final in 10 innings. The Mariners best the Astros 9-7 in Houston. The Mets, man, that's not a good Cardinals team. You ought not be losing them 6-3 at home, Drew. You ought not be doing that.
We're not a good Mets team, so.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Buccos get the W at PNC Park. It's 4-2, your final score there. Orioles 3-1 over the Texas Rangers in Camden Yards. Blue Jays go to Fenway and steal one, 4-3. Toronto gets the victory. It's the Nationals 6-1 over the Reds. The Tigers all over the Royals to start the second half of this season. 10-2, Motor City Kitties. That'll do it for us. When we come back, it's Gene Williams talking a little bit more about the Peach Bowl, about the hype, and about FSU Alabama right after this. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio is presented by TNT Golf Cart Supercenter, your one-stop shop for all your outdoor entertainment. Here's Ryan Kelly.
All right, welcome back to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Happy to have the boss man joining us on the phone line. The founder and administrator of warchant.com, Mr. Gene Williams, joins us after ACC kickoff and right before football. And, Gene, we've hit that point, man. It's all downhill from here.
That's good. I think we're due for football, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yes, sir. Not a bad thing at all. But first of all, before we get into some of the stuff I know you've been writing, Gene's got a really good piece, and I'm not just bragging on the boss because he's on the phone line, but a really interesting piece about some of the numbers and some of the stuff that's gone into the tickets for Florida State, Alabama. And I mean, we've been talking about the hype for this for a very, very long time. I mean, months ago, even before the spring, just how big this game was going to be and how many people were going to care. And we'll get into that in a second. But first of all, you need to go check out that written piece. So make sure you've got that going. But before we do that, Gene, we're wrapping up Decades of Dominance this week. We're finishing the offensive line. We're going through tackle, then guard, and then center. Tackle voting is going to be just about wrapped up by the time you guys hear this. But guard and center going on. Before we even get into offensive line, I wanted to think overall, what do you think as you look at the overall Decades team? How do you feel about it, Gene?
It's pretty good. I mean, there's so many great players. That's one thing you realize when people start nominating and the votes go on. You're like, wow, there's just so many great players at each position. So it's hard. No one's going to be happy because someone's going to get left off a list. It was really, really good. There's a couple things. I mean, I think the fans have done a really good job. If I had veto powers, and maybe Ryan, I think we ought to do is when this is all wrapped up, maybe we get the staff together and we kind of vote on our all-decade team and kind of compare. There's a couple things that just I'm not real happy with. I think, and I love Telvin Smith, but I mean, I would not have had him on the first team. I'm sorry, when you got guys like Sam Coward out there, I think I'd put them ahead of him. Overall, but it's hard to argue about too many more. Maybe would have had at least Edgar Bennett in the top two at fullback. I can't believe he didn't make the top two even. A guy who I think he had something like over 2,300 all-purpose yards at FSU for a fullback, which is insane.
And when you think about the fullback's role in today's football, it's almost mind-blowing to even think about a guy with that many yards at that position.
Yeah, and it's just he could do. That's the thing. I mean, there were a couple games there were injuries. He lined up a tailback, was great. He could catch the ball in the backfield. He could do, he could do so much. And not to take it away from Bar None or from Lonnie Pryor, were great fullbacks also. But I mean, he really kind of like changed that position. Was so dynamic back in the day that I think deserved a little bit more recognition. But again, probably aging myself because he played back when I was here, and I think a lot of the people voting, I think especially on Twitter, kind of skew a little bit to the younger range. You probably don't remember Edgar playing here.
Well, you take a look at what we're voting on right now or what's about to wrap up, and that's offensive tackle. And I don't think it's really a big surprise that Walter Jones is leading in the vote.
Not a surprise, but you know what? He did not get my vote for the top two. And I'll tell you why. Because, Ryan, he played one season, and his honor was second-team All-ACC. Now, look at the next two guys in the lineup. Brett Williams, I don't think, gets his deserve. Because he didn't have really much of a pro career, but he won 2 Jacobs blocking trophies, a 4-year starter, won a national championship, played in another. And then Alex Barron, unanimous All-American 1 year, consensus another, 25 career starts. I don't know. I guess people look a little bit more at the pro career. If you look at Walter Jones' pro career, there's no doubt how great he was. I don't know. I guess we're kind of looking at more at their college careers. In that case, I don't think I would put him there. But, like you said, he's obviously going to go home with a trophy.
But I think sometimes, and when you look at most of these polls, I think the only real outlier is Peter Warwick, who didn't have the greatest of pro careers, but of course is arguably one of the best to ever wear the garnet and gold. Whenever somebody has a good pro career, and especially a long pro career, we tend to, and this isn't a Florida State thing, this isn't a college football, this is just a football in general thing. When somebody has a great pro career, we tend to kind of revisionist history every little thing that they've done.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, because you talk to a lot of old schoolers, and they'll tell you that Marvin Jones, I mean, just going by purely the college career, Marvin Jones is a better linebacker than Derrick Brooks. But obviously he had an incredible pro career with the Bucs, one of the greatest pro linebackers to ever play the game. So, when votes like this come out, he usually gets the edge above Shade Tree, which I completely understand. And, I think in that case, you're happy to have either one of those guys.
So with that being said, we move on. It's offensive guard this week. I want to know a couple of your thoughts on those guys.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one because, we were here with Rodney Hudson, obviously, and what a great player he is, and he's doing real well in the NFL. I think he's probably going to run away with it. I'm not sure there's another guy that really jumps out. I mean, a lot of great players there. The guy kind of likes a dark horse because I got to cover him, and just such a crazy personality. He was just a country guy and just so tough, and that's Jason Whitaker back here, in the late 90s. Such a great guy in the early 2000s. It's fun. I remember interviewing him once, and he had no compunction about calling Steve Spurrier out one time. Just a really fun guy to cover. But, yeah, I think that's Rodney Hudson's to win.
Yeah, that number, I think everybody's just kind of playing for that second spot there. And then, of course, only one center, and there will be a lot of debate, but I know maybe a little bit of recency bias, but I think Brian Stork is very, very underrated in his role on that 2013 title team.
I think you're right, and I think a guy had something like 20 career starts, so obviously won the national championship, the Remington Trophy, given to the best center. So, yeah, I think he probably wins, especially because, again, it's the kind of the recency thing. But, I mean, honestly, if you go by college accolades, I think Clay Shriver might have a little bit more on him. Consensus All-American. Now, I know Bobby Bowden was quoted back in the day when we did interviews about his offensive line. He said that Shriver was the best center he had ever coached. But, of course, he didn't coach Brian Stork. So, really, to me, it comes down to those two guys. I don't know which one I'm going to vote for right now. I mean, it's such a great competition between those guys.
Yeah, the only reason that I would give Stork the edge is just go back and look at the film of some of those games and just how active he is, not necessarily as a blocker. Of course, he was a great blocker, and he was a great center of that offensive line, but the way he would point out protections, the way he would point out coverages, the way that I think you saw, part of Jameis Winston, I don't want to say his step back in 2014, because of course he still had phenomenal numbers, but I think part of what was different in calling out what that offense needs to do is having that trusted senior under center. Or as a center.
And I think in the system too, it doesn't under Jimbo Fisher and Rick Trickett, they put a lot more on the center. I mean, I think that's the most more is on that position on the line than anywhere else you like in terms of making those calls, in terms of what Rick Trickett asks of his center. So for Stork to be able to do that and to thrive in that system, that's a good point.
So that being said, did want to move on a little bit. Warchant.com, front page right now, you can read Mr. Williams' story about Florida State and Alabama and the hype and the money and the ticket sales. And, of course, we found out just a week ago Florida State, Alabama is a sellout. Not only that, those tickets are at an all-time high. Secondary market, first market. It seems like $500 is what you're going to be willing to spend before the processing fees and all that just to get in the door of this thing.
Yeah, that's the cheap seats. Go somewhere from $450 to $500 if you want. It's in the club seats. I think it's around $1,600 right now for a game. And when we did the story, talked to SeatGeek, who's our ticket partner there. You get all. It's kind of like you get all the tickets. You can see where they are in there, and it's a good way to go ahead and get tickets. But they calculated it out for us what the average ticket price for this game in the secondary market is: $712. And I know that sounds like a lot, but let me put that in perspective. The national championship game last year went for $607 on average. So this game is trending, pricing more, $100 more than last year's national championship game. In the greatest FSU in terms of second since 2010, it's $230 for a ticket, an average ticket price, and that was the Oklahoma FSU game, that big game here in Tallahassee back then. So this game is 3 times more expensive than that game was a few years ago for FSU. So really, it's just amazing to me that it's I guess it's not that amazing that it's pricing this high, but I'm lucky we have press passes because I don't know if I could afford that ticket.
Yeah, there's certainly no way. I don't think many of us in the media would be able to spring that. But I'll say this, Gene. And I think it goes back to, and Drew and I have talked about this before. Flashback, rewind to 2007. It's Nick Saban's first year as head coach of Alabama. It's Jimbo Fisher's first year as offensive coordinator at Florida State. They played that game in Jacksonville. Those are two awful teams, and that was a horrendously ugly football game. And you'd have never known it from the crowd and the atmosphere and all that. And I think what you're seeing in these prices is the indication of if that game between those two, 7 and 6 squads, I think they both went, got that much hype and that much power. Just imagine what those two teams, as the number 1 and the number 2 ranked teams in the country, can produce.
Well, I think it really is a perfect storm. I mean, everything is going right. Like you said, these are two storied programs with great fan bases. And then you throw in the fact that it's touted a lot, and I know Gary Stokan's going to talk about it here in a minute, but I mean, it looks like the greatest opener of all time in college football. As long as FSU is at least ranked number 2 or 3, it will be that. And you have a brand new stadium, a $1.6 billion stadium with a 360-degree video screen, a retractable roof, all this crazy stuff. And you obviously have some coaches with a lot of history together. You've got kind of the whole ACC, SEC changing the guard thing to add a little bit more drama to the whole game. So it's just so many neat things are playing into this that you can kind of see why there's so much hype around it, why the ticket prices are skyrocketing.
There's a novelty factor to a certain extent. You said it with the stadium. There's a heritage factor between, Florida State and Alabama are two storied programs in the South who don't exactly play a whole lot. That this game does not happen often. It's never happened in the postseason, which, you almost find a little hard to believe. But Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher, of course, having their ties. Bobby Bowden, of course, having his long ties with Alabama. The city of Atlanta has kind of become that capital city of college football, and Stokan and all the guys over at the Peach Bowl have done a really good job of promoting that. And you're right. To me, this is just everything's kind of right place, right time. And you have to imagine, as excited as Alabama fans are, as excited as Florida State fans are, the real dollar signs in people's eyes are the folks that are running the Peach Bowl right now.
Oh, they got to love it. I mean, you absolutely have to love that. I mean, they've done a great job with the Peach Bowl itself because, you go by the numbers, it's one of the most consistent bowl games in terms of selling out every year. They're now in the round table for the championships and all the playoffs. And you're right. I mean, they've done a great job of getting college football centered there. It's still a shame to me that the SEC kind of has a monopoly on the championship game there. I mean, we'll live with Charlotte, but, it is great to go to Atlanta for college football.
Well, I think it's just the idea that the Peach Bowl has done a good job, and we're going to hear from Gary Stokan here in a second, but not to do his job for him and promote the Peach Bowl, but over the years, even before it was a part of this big New Year's Six, back when it was the New Year's Eve game and it was ACC SEC, there's something ACC SEC matchups. I know we're a little biased because we're around it, but the thing is, they've done a good job of not just grabbing ACC SEC matchups, and they're both in the South and they both can travel very close, but compelling matchups that you don't get to see every day. You don't get to see LSU Clemson often, but it's also a game that people would think, wow, that sounds awesome. South Carolina and Florida State back in 2010. Steve Spurrier getting one more shot at Florida State and Florida State getting one more shot at him. Of course, you want to go see that game. They've done a really good job of getting matchups, and even now with these kickoff games, with West Virginia and Alabama and Virginia Tech playing all those games. And, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm compelled to watch Georgia Tech, Tennessee the next night. I mean, they've done a very good job of scouting opponents and scouting matchups that people will be interested in, and I don't think it gets any bigger than Florida State, Alabama in that circumstance.
No, and I think it's when you talk about just going back to the Peach Bowl a little bit, and it's not just you're right. There have been some great matchups over the year. They do a good job with that, but really just it's class from top to bottom, not to sound like one of those press conferences with all the coaches come out and speak well, because people know if I'm not happy about a bowl game or kind of how things are run, I won't hesitate to tell you. But I got to tell you that the process is first class. I mean, everything to do for the media. I mean, we're all greedy. We love our food. You walk into that place and they're rolling out with all kind of candy and Chick-fil-A sandwiches and everything else. And the hospitality people there are fantastic. There's always somebody around there to help you. It's just very efficient and extremely well run. then it resonates. Not only how they treat the media, but if they do it that way, that kind of goes how they treat the teams and how they treat the fans and everybody else. That's why I think they were able to earn, one of those spots among the New Year's Six, because they built up such a great reputation.
Major market with a good stadium. I mean, heck, even the Georgia Dome in its later years was still a great venue to watch a football game. I mean, but that plus the matchups plus the ratings draw, it just all made sense for the Chick-fil-A Bowl and now the Peach Bowl once again to join that New Year's Six. And I'm excited to see this game, and I think I speak for just about everybody when I'm ready for September 2nd to get here. But, Gene, thank you very much, my friend. Always appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Ryan.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Gary Stokan of the Peach Bowl is going to join our own Irish Affel from a conversation they had at ACC kickoff in Charlotte on Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by our friends from For the Table.
You get a shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park, but meantime.
Yes, Florida State just landed a 5-star commitment.
I don't see that anywhere online. How did you get that news so fast?
I'm on the new warchant.com app. I get news updates and scores pushed to my phone instantly.
How much does it cost?
It's free. Just go to iTunes or the Google Play Store, type in Warchant, and install it on your phone. That's it.
A free app that keeps me constantly up to date on Florida State sports and recruiting? Wow, that makes it incredibly easy to follow my Seminoles and never miss out.
With the app, you'll also get quick access to all the stories and features on Warchant, including the ever-popular message boards that feature thousands of fans talking about the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio is presented by TNT Golf Cart Supercenter, your one-stop shop for all your outdoor entertainment. Here's Ryan Kelly.
Welcome back. This is Ira Schofel in Charlotte, North Carolina at ACC Kickoff with Gary Stokan, the president and CEO of the Peach Bowl Incorporated. Gary, it just seems like we were talking earlier, this has been the FSU-Alabama kickoff game has been in the works for, how long? When did this first kind of start? What was the genesis of this game?
Okay, so when did Jimbo get the job? 9, 10?
10. 2010 was his first season. 2010,
I visited with him and said, hey, we've started this Chick-fil-A kickoff game, which we started in 2008. I said, we'd love to have you guys whenever you're going to get an opening in your schedule. He said, Gary, let me get my recruits in, let me put my system in, my process, and we'd love to play. Fast forward to like 2013, I tell him, hey, I've got Alabama in 17. Would you like to play them? And I think when they win the national championship.
2013.
So it was right after that. He said, yeah, we're ready. And here we go, 2017. We've got the GOAT, the greatest opener all time, number 1 against number 2. And these two teams could be in the same city, in the same facility at the end of the year. Number 1 against number 2 is, I'm sure Florida State's going to be, expected or voted to win the ACC, and I'm sure Alabama's voted to win the SEC. So no matter who loses this game, if they take care of their own business, they're in the college football playoff.
Has that been one of the things that's helped these games, that you're not necessarily knocked out if you lose a game?
It's a great point, Ira. I tell you, with the advent of the CFP now and the committee, this type of game gathers more positiveness for the team, even though they may lose, than in the BCS era. In the BCS era, you may be out if you lost this game. Now, in the CFP, it's almost better than a loss in this type of game against this type of opponent if they win their conference. Is better than playing a non-directional school or a FCS or a smaller FBS school. So, it's made a big difference to the point now where with the CFP demanding people play a better non-conference schedule, we've got people contacting us.
When you got the yes from Jimbo in 2013 or so, that's the beginning, though, right? How many hurdles still have to be cleared in terms of payouts and negotiations?
No, you're right.
And all that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, all of a sudden, you got to say, okay, we got the coaches to agree. And I give credit to Jimbo and to Nick that they're so competitive and they want their teams to compete at the highest level that they're willing to play a game like this. Mm-hmm. Not all coaches are. So now you got to talk to the ADs and say, okay, how many tickets would you like? What kind of money are we talking about? You start negotiating that. There's a process in place that it does take some time. And, thank God, again, for Jimbo and Nick that both of them are highly thought of by both their athletic directors. And because they committed first, then we were able to negotiate a positive outcome.
You had pretty good odds, obviously, when you put your money on Florida State and Alabama being at the top of their game when this happened. I mean, there's a good chance these two teams are going to be doing well, but nobody could have known that maybe a 1 versus 2 matchup. I mean, I think you've said it's never happened before. I think the closest was a 1 versus 4.
Yeah, 1 versus 4 in 1986, UCLA and Oklahoma, and in '83, I think Penn State and Nebraska. So if these teams are ranked number 1 against number 2, 1 against 3, 2 against 3, we've got the best opening game ever in 149 years of college football.
Wow. And so the excitement, can you even quantify the excitement and what this has been like for you and the
Well, I guess the best way to quantify it is everybody I see. I'm trying to duck people here because every person I've seen, literally today, I saw 2 people at lunch. I just saw someone after I got done with another radio station. They came up to me and says, "Hey, I hate to ask, but I really need 2 tickets, or can I get 4?" I got literally list as long as my arm, both arms, and I haven't even looked at the list yet. I just said to my ticket guy, say, add this guy to the list, and we'll get to it at some point. So that gives you a feel. But, people have been talking about this game since after last year, spring, summer, and that's what's great about this game, the exposure you get from everybody talking about it. We'll probably have game day there. Hadn't been announced, but probably more than likely. The TV rating, primetime, ABC first week will be through the roof. It's got a great lead-in with Florida, Michigan playing in Dallas. So, everything's setting up. I just hope we get a great game out of it, and, we go 3 overtimes.
So the stadium, how many seats will it hold about?
So it's a little bit smaller than the Dome, about 70,000 and change. We have contemplated, and we're not there yet, but we have contemplated about selling standing room only because there's such a demand for the game.
Like a concert back in the day.
Yeah. Exactly right. I mean, it's just amazing to see, and you hit on it. We didn't know that they'd be number 1 against number 2. We felt like they'd be a top 10 teams, but number 1 against number 2, and as we said, the GOAT game, the greatest opener of all time. It's going to be electric, and that plus the new stadium, plus Jimbo and Nick both being West Virginia guys, plus being friends that have coached on a national championship team. Plus, you look since 2010, Florida State's second in wins only to Alabama, 78-86. They both won, I think Alabama's won 16 of its last openers. Florida State's won 5. And arguably Jimbo and Nick are 2 of the top 4 or 5 coaches in the country. So there's so many bylines to this thing. As we get closer, it's just going to be unbelievable how it gets to a crescendo.
Yeah, I think FSU President John Thrasher, I was talking to him in the spring. And he
Great
said,
guy.
And
I
he
really
said,
like him.
Yeah, and he's a big fan of this game. He's excited. I think he said that they could have sold 100,000 tickets to FSU fans. If they had 100,000 tickets, they could have sold them to FSU fans.
Well, we laugh. We talked about keeping the Georgia Dome open and having 2 facilities going at one time. But I heard Florida State made a lot of money from the alumni packaging the tickets to this game.
Yeah.
Which is no one's ever done that before. So credit Florida State and Stan and President Thrasher for coming up with that.
So when you talk about the game itself, at what point do you just kind of sit back, okay, we've done all we can do? Is it when the kickoff? Is that when kickoff happens? Because, like you said, it's a 7-year – I mean, this has been in the works, really, for 7 years.
Yeah. My staff is the best in the business. They do a wonderful job. Our volunteers are fantastic. It's unlike a bowl game. We try and create it to be like a home game, so we'll integrate what Florida State does in home games, what Alabama does. We only get the teams for a night and a day, but for the fans, we're gonna have our Home Depot tailgate town outside next to game day if it comes. Inside, we're gonna have our Georgia World Congress Center Coca-Cola fan zone going on. We're going to take the College Football Hall of Fame and personalize it to Florida State and Alabama. So we're going to really create a unique fan experience around this game, and it should be. It's going to be a celebration of college football. So, the fans will have a great time, and we're really looking forward. Florida State people have always been good to us, and, we're going to have them back in 2020 in the Bowden Bowl, West Virginia and Florida State.
Yep.
So, it's exciting. You get around this, see the coaches and the players, and you start to feel like, hey, we're really close to teeing this thing off, but it's 50 days out still. So we got some work to do.
I know you were confident all along about the stadium. it looks like it's everything's a go. Could you give us kind of like an audio tour of what, I mean, because just some of the pictures have been unbelievable.
Yeah, I tell you, Ira, I was in there a month ago, and then I was in there 4 days ago, and it's been amazing the progress they've made. I mean, from the art, there's going to be unique art in the facility. Credit Arthur Blank. He wanted this to be a true fan experience. So whether it's a 100-yard bar that's going to go the full length of the field, to the Halo board is 360 degrees.
It looks unbelievable.
Taller than Jerry Jones' board in Dallas, but yet 360 degrees all the way around. That's already in. The facility is going to open and close at the top. It's going to have food and drink. You're going to be able to get a Coke for $1.50, $2, and be able to get free refills. You're going to be able to buy a Chick-fil-A for $3.50 or whatever is in the store instead of huge markups. Yeah. He's probably giving up money there, but he wanted the fans to have a good experience. And then all the things I mentioned that we're doing outside the stadium. The sight lines are fantastic, tight. So it's going to be a remarkable fan experience. And when you put two college teams, you've been in the Georgia Dome. When you put two college teams in a dome facility, instead of having just one team having its home game, it just gets louder in there because you got two different bands playing. You got two fan bases that are yelling and screaming, standing the whole game. I can't wait. I'm getting chills just talking about it here, just ready to tee this thing up.
Your goal at the beginning of your mission as CEO of the Peach Bowl organization was to kind of make Atlanta the capital of college football. Do you feel like you're there? Is this
well, you're a better judge of that than I am, but we've tried to, by starting the kickoff format, having the GOAT game, having a Tennessee-Georgia Tech to follow that on Monday, having the College Football Hall of Fame move to Atlanta, having the national championship game at the end of the year. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, our 50th year, our golden season, is going to lead into the Rose Bowl on January 1st, where we'll have two top 10 teams from the college football playoff playing in that game. This is going to be the greatest year of college football in our history in Atlanta. Not many cities can have arguably number one against number two to start the season. Oh, by the way, we got the SEC championship game in there.
Yeah.
And then to have a Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl with two top 10 teams, and then number one against number two again at the end of the season in the championship game. So I don't have any doubt that this year we should be recognized as the heartbeat of college football, the capital of college football, and definitely the epicenter of college football.
Gary, always appreciate your time. Always enjoy talking to you. Thanks again, and good luck, and we'll see you up there on September 2nd.
Well, thanks for the way you treat us, Aaron. We look forward to hosting you and all the Florida State Seminoles up there September 2nd.
Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio is presented by TNT Golf Cart Supercenter, your one-stop shop for all your outdoor entertainment. Here's Ryan Kelly.
Wow! Putting a bow on it here. Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio. Ryan Kelly and Drew Hicken with you. Get ready to hand it on over to Mike and Mike. One thing we didn't get to at the top of the show, ACC Player of the Year. Those rankings also got put out. Lamar Jackson, I don't think there's really any surprise there. Picked to be the Player of the Year. Number two, a little interesting, DeAndre Francois. 23 votes compared to Lamar Jackson's 113. So it's a pretty wide gap, but Frenchie getting some love from the ACC media.
Yeah, I think there's this overwhelming sense that Frenchie's going to take this big step forward amongst a lot of people this year. And I also think many people assume Florida State to just be a better team. And you see it all the time when the teams are better and their teams are 11-1, 12-0 kind of deals. The quarterbacks and the running backs and players of that magnitude tend to get a little bit more of the accolades. So I think in that sense that would be why he is getting the amount of love that he's getting preseason-wise.
Francois on this list, if I'm not mistaken, Derwin James was on the ballot, and he's not here amongst the top 10 players. It's Lamar Jackson, DeAndre Francois, Christian Wilkins, the D-tackle from Clemson. Harold Landry, who Ira admitted on Monday's show was his vote. He ends up with 8 votes. In fourth place, Jalen Samuels. Eric Dungy only gets 2. I think Dungy could put up some numbers with that offense, with the way they play ball. I get it. It's Syracuse. They're not going to win a ton of ball games. They're not going to be super competitive, but that kid can flat play.
Yeah, I think the only way a guy like Dungy could win would be if the ACC just had a real down year. I mean, we're talking best team 9-3, which I just don't see happening. Because that's when a guy, unless he just tears it up. But that's if a guy like Dungy from Syracuse is going to win, I just really have to feel like there's not going to be a huge national spotlight on the conference for him to win ACC Player of the Year.
And that's why I feel like a lot of folks, especially those in the ACC media, voting for DeAndre Francois, because as we've talked about so many times over the last couple days, the ACC has lost so much quarterback talent this year. You need DeAndre Francois to step up and be the guy right beside Lamar Jackson. You need more stars of that caliber. You need more dudes like that. You need Daniel Jones from Duke. You need Eric Dungy. You need all those guys to kind of be the new face of your conference.
I'm still, like you said, pretty surprised that a guy like Derwin James didn't even get a single vote. I think that's pretty wild to me.
Call me crazy. I'm pretty sure he was on the ballot. I do not have the ballot in front of me. I did vote in the thing, but there were a lot of options. But I'm almost positive that he was on the ballot, which is a little weird.
I would assume he would. I mean, I get it. Like, Christian Wilkinson's a great player, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, if you're going to throw guys like that on there, why shouldn't Derwin be on there too? You know, it's surprising to me that he didn't get any votes. I agree. I think he was on the ballot. I'm not 100% sure.
Obviously, with the Peach Bowl, we've sung Chick-fil-A's praises a lot today, but in the spirit of fairness to Chick-fil-A, I do have to raise an eyebrow at the fast food giant who, according to Business Insider, plans on rolling out, quote-unquote, family-style meals, which will include such homemade sides as macaroni and cheese and baked beans and chicken nuggets to serve alongside rolls, trying to compete with KFC. I don't know how I feel about this.
We've actually talked about this, funny enough, in my advertising class, of how it benefits Chick-fil-A to not try to compete with the KFCs and things of that nature, because it's just the competitive pool and things like that. It's just not where their strength is. So it's interesting to hear that that's exactly what they're about to start trying to do.
And that's the one thing I was going to say when it comes to Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A's advertising has never been against the other chicken places. It's never been we're a competitor to Zaxby's or we're a competitor to KFC or Bojangles or any of those places. Who do they go after? They go after the burger folks. So, yeah, this is kind of strange to me. Usually when they introduce something, it's to run against the Whopper or to run against the Big Mac or to run against something like that. And now you're running against KFC? Now's the time to do that? Okay, sure.
And I'm going to be honest. I love Chick-fil-A. You're not going to catch me going there for some mac and cheese and baked beans and nuggets. I'm sorry. If I'm doing that, like you said, I'm going to a Zaxby's. I'm going to a Popeyes.
I was going to say, I'm going to get some bone-in chicken. If I'm going to have a home-style meal, I'm going to have some bone-in fried chicken, not nuggets.
I mean, I'd even rather go to Publix, honestly. I'd rather go to Publix and get whatever they got going on over there. It's just, I don't know. That's an interesting move by Chick-fil-A. When did they say they're going to do that?
I do not know the actual date it rolls out. I do know that family meal is going to run you $30. So new meals start at $29.99, include one entree, 2 sides, and 8 mini rolls to serve to 4 people. Boy, we gave out a lot of free love in this segment. Lots of free love. But overall, I will say this. I will at least try the mac and cheese. I am too much of I'm a mac and cheese snob. I am someone who judges it. And speaking of free love, why don't we give out some love to our sponsor? Our friends over at Township have phenomenal mac and cheese. It's worth your time. But I'll try that. I don't know how I feel about baked beans from there. But, yeah, nuggets, Chick-fil-A chicken breasts, give me the bone-in stuff. Give me that stuff. If we're talking Sunday supper, we got to have ourselves some good stuff. But, folks, we're just about all out of time. Drew Hicken, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks to you guys for listening. It's Mike and Mike coming up next. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Hey, thanks for downloading today's show. If you haven't already, why don't you rate and subscribe us? We certainly do appreciate it, and of course, we appreciate you listening anyway, so just go ahead and click that right there. You know you want to. Come on. Come on. Thanks again for letting us do the show. We love giving you all the football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, all year round. Not just football season, not just spring practice, but hopefully giving you the freshest and newest FSU content every day. Thanks, guys.